Hey, welcome to the Dream Labs. Dr. Contrast live here. I hope all is well. And Brant and Nemo, great to have you on board. And nice to see the bantering back and forth about who was first. Let's put it this way. In both cases, no one's last. So really appreciate you being on board here, guys. And before we begin, I thought we'd just kind of go back and do a little bit of a review here. This is the second part of the Language of Line series we've been working on. We started last Tuesday. And I really think it's important to bring back again to our remembrance the fact that in the drawing cycle, there's a lot of different approaches and processes we can work with. But I think when you break it down into line content, there really is three different empires or different areas of line that we can deal with. And I think the one we worked with last week, to me, from experience and just working with it, developing shape and contrasts and ideas and working with clients and so forth around the globe, was the idea of beginning to learn how to put together a form system. What is form? How does it work? And how does it function? I just brought back some of these sketches to review a little bit here. If you remember last week, we talked about the fact the importance about form is it's the beginning of the first state of developing a shape. So it's seeing things inside the paper, so to speak, and bringing it forward by being extremely soft and very supple. No real hard connections. Slow down. I can barely keep. All right, we'll go back again here. Let's take a minute here and review what this whole form thing really does. Form is really its function is the beginning or the inception of creating an idea. It doesn't mean you define it. It doesn't mean you finish it. It means you start it. You begin to develop it, or you let it grow, for example, in your mind as you begin to work through the process. And I think from the drawing point of view, what's really interesting about the form side of life is it's extremely lucid, it's very quick, and above all else, it's extremely soft. You don't get into a lot of hard edging and a lot of outlining, so to speak. You just really take your time in terms of putting things down slowly, and then very slowly building it all up. And again, I made a huge issue last week, for example, gentlemen, of when you work with form, you're actually working with the full weight of the lead of the pencil. You're not up on the point, so to speak, up on this end here. You're down on the side of that pencil, letting it all work, for example. Let's just do this again here very quickly. It's a nice series of strokes, for example, that change and go very soft. And by changing the angle of your hand, you can come in and really change a lot of pressure. By lifting up a little bit and getting more weight into it, you can go back from light into dark and then back to light again. So that's the idea of what really helps to develop when you put together an idea, whether it's figure drawing or if it's fine art or if it's landscape work or painting or whatever it might be. A lot of painters I know, for example, when I go watercolor, I use this approach very, very delicate. I start very light with a very large brush or a very finely tuned brush. Then go the closer it is to the lead, the harder the color becomes. Yeah, to the tip. That's exactly right. You know, you just really kind of lean up. If you lay it down normally, then you begin to put the pressure on the weight of the lead itself, Brad. Yeah, by changing your attitude, keeping it parallel, and then stepping up with your hand, so to speak, begins to lift the weight or change the value just by very quickly. It happens instantly. So. With that being said, I just thought we'd review some of these shapes. Let's see how we work with this. And again, very, very much just generating a lot of round work and then coming back in very softly on the side of the pencil and just creating the shape as we go. This is actually element number 1, just to look at how form begins to function, keeping it very soft and gentle again, nothing really hard-edged. Second phase we did was just going back into different shapes and combining certain forms. Let's just see how it operates. Notice a lot of weight on this guy, but very light as we go back in space. Same thing here, a lot of weight down below. And as we go back in space, kind of lightening it up a little bit, same weight, but it has a different character than the one down below. So it's really essential. And then, of course, coming back into a very rounder form such as this, being very tapered or conical, now you come back in and just put a little more emphasis, for example, by the side of the pencil to get that to work, for example, more depth or more shadow into it. Then as you let it go, you come out of it, and then you come right back to the weight again to get this thing. Notice, darkest to me, and lighter as it goes away. And that's a lot to do with learning how to perceive depth on paper without really pushing, for example. And I think the most terrifying thing we can do to our work, no matter what the subject matter is, to be very hard lined all the way around. For example, every line is the same weight. That's fatal from my point of view. And I hope that really helps to kind of clarify what we're looking at here in terms of, again, form. Very supple, very soft, very deliberate, and extremely constructive. It's not final. It's a building process, letting your ideas come off the paper and seeing how it begins to function as you go through it. And then phase, the last one we did was something like this. We just took that into another element, going to like a side view of a transportation design system, where we laid down a lot of hard concept work, for example, with the side of the pencil, and the full weight of the lead here, and then being soft in some areas and very harsh in other areas. But still looking at the whole concept of being extremely supple and not locked into, for example, a lot of hard line weights. Now, even here, for example, those two lines were done with the side of the pencil doing the following. There it is right there. It's still on the side of the pencil, but I'm getting the same weight down and doing the same thing on the far side. Side of the pencil, the same weight, not lifting it up and doing this. That's it. That's really that was not the purpose or the method involved in developing a form. So again, we did this, and we just did a little elevation study and put it in perspective, just building some very soft shapes. And then from those soft shapes, begin to develop the shape out of there, keeping it extremely soft and again, very supple. So what I'm going to concentrate on today is, unless somebody stop there, any questions so far there, gentlemen? So far, so good? Again, there are 3 estates. The first one we dealt with, which was last Tuesday and just reviewed, was form. How to begin to generate a shape coming out of the paper and let it live without being so definitive that it starves it or it shuts it down or it chokes it. The second estate is extremely unique in the sense that all of a sudden it's the exact inverse or the opposite of form. This is called position. And position's function is extremely different. For example, now you're no longer holding the pencil like this. Now you're changing the articulation and coming up on top of the lead by doing the following. And position structure begins to look like this. Hand up, and I'll just do a couple, again, line weights. Very soft, into dark, into light, back into dark again. That's positioning the viewer. Notice how those weights changes, for example, in those line weights. That's getting right up on the tip of the pencil and really now burning in very lightly. Again, into dark, into intermediate, back into dark again, and just changing the weight of some of those shapes. That's position's function. It has that kind of character now. And as we go through the lesson plans here today, we're going to really focus in on what position does and what it looks like. Again, that's the antithesis or the opposite of form. Now we're going to be very hard edge. We're going to use line weight now, or speed of a line, to develop a really interesting piece. Which grip is better for coloring, Doc? Well, it's a combination of both, Brett. You're going to go into a situation, if you hang on here, for example, last week we had one approach to soft and gentle, which is form. And then the other today is going to be position. Now you'll work with both of them as we go down the line, and then next week we'll show you that third phase and how to put the two together to treat it as a combination of surfaces and shapes. Let's take some very simple basic forms here and show you how this position thing works. For example, if you go to a round form, for example, let's do this. If you come back up on the top, you begin to look at position by very softly and come back in and create where that change of weight is and take it back. All of a sudden, there's a good example of how to develop a round form, getting everything closest to me extremely crisp. As it moves away, it gets really light, or it goes into perspective, for example. And that's another approach to it. For example, a line weight change can be doing this as well. You can come back in and just create the face of a cube. For example, I'm working just very basic shapes here first to get the idea down on what position does in terms of the difference between it and form. Then we come back into this closest to me. I'm going to really hammer home this line here. Watch what happens here. Thick to thin. Let it fade. Rotate the pager. Go upside down if I need to. Come right back in there and go dark. Thick to thin. Notice I'm not even going to touch the back side of those lines. That's going to give me the sense of depth that I'm after. That's what position does. It's a weight transfer that puts everything closest to you in context. And as you move back in space, it just kind of fades. Doesn't really need to outline those shapes back there, other than just maybe add a couple of things like this where the light source is coming from, just to kind of indicate where that shape is. No more, no less. Position's job is to really fine-tune and highlight and streamline the shape in terms of thick and thin lines. Other than, unlike form, whereas form develops the whole shape softly. So hopefully let's move along here. Let's put this into context. I'm just doing a nice little simple little sketch here. Let's put this into practice. If I start a sketch, start here, go through here, nail that in. Let's start with a nice simple line drawing study first. Now, let's put the position in place. I'm going to emphasize this form. Closest to me, a lot of weight. Dark. Up. Turn the corner, fade it. Backside line, very lightly. Notice. Up front again. Turn the corner, let it fade. Back here, nothing. Here, a little lighter up on top. Into that. Again, line weight change. Run it across. Underneath, just a bit. But again, a little bit of highlight where that light's coming from, and they're here. Now down below, a little bit of weight. A little bit of weight. Run it across. Run it across. No need to tone. I'm not going to do any tone here. I'm just working with just simple lines. Look how the weights, hopefully this is working for you guys. If I come back across, let's add another design line in here. Let's add a little shelf in here. Notice how that shelf becomes extremely paramount. And I take it around the corner. Let it fade. Notice how those lines, pardon me as I just come around the bend here a bit. Look how those lines begin to telegraph the weight in space. Closest to me, really bold. As it moves away, lighter. As it moves away, lighter. No need to touch the top of this thing at all. I mean, that's the real power of positioning a form, for example, or using position as a line study to really develop a shape and a form. Let's go this route. Again, same sketch. Draw it in. Be very deliberate as you first go through it and start to separate it. Now let's use weight. Let's use line weight to really stress. Let's really stress how this begins to function. Let's go this way. Now, closest to me, weight this thing up. Dark, thick to thin. Turn it upside down. Pardon me for moving the paper here, gang. Play up the weight, let it fade. Play up the weight, let it fade. Come back again, play up the weight, let it fade, etc. Again, and through here, play up the weight, Again, go across here just to kind of change a little bit of pace here, kind of give it some weight. Then run that in the form itself. No need to tone this thing. I'm going to let line weight now do the job for me. That line weight is going to dictate what that shape begins to look like. Look at the, didn't think about that, but it's basically nothing different than using the concept perspective house. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly, as a real wireframe. That's exactly correct, Nemo. Well done. The idea of getting a position to workforce is to really let the whole idea of using the concept of perspective also. Closest to me, hit it. As it moves away, fade it. Closest to me, hit it. As it moves away, fade it. Extremely powerful stuff. Let's go back and do a little thumbnail sketch here down below too. Now, and elements like that, it works in one fashion. Now you go to a rounder system, how do you work that? You go like this, same sketch, bring it in again, draw through it, put an axis into it, come back through it again, connect the dots, same process. Closest to me, bring the line weights up, weight it, lose it, weight it, lose it. Underneath, furthest away, up on top, closest to me, really hit it, let it fade. Now draw back into it. And closest to me, a lot of weight. As I go back in the shape, let's add a little bit of design line here. Closest to me, pardon me as I turn this around here. Closest to me. As I go back, let it fade. Underneath, that's it. I put a little bit of drawing line in here just to kind of give it a highlight sequence. Look at the difference in the weight of that sketch. It just begins to really jump off the page in terms of just thickness of line. Closest to me, let it fire away. And then again, detailing work in here. Now you can back in through and do this. Just getting right back to this center line. I can add this, and this, and this. Again, thick, thick, nothing. Detail, detail, detail. Look how simple that looks, but it hopefully begins to really telegraph what the shape is doing. Let me stop there for a second again. Is this helping? Making sense? Let me sharpen the stick here while we're waiting here for some response. Very cool. So far, so good, gang. Let's start another page here. Just got to go down the line here and get something started here. Let's do this, this, and this. Get these guys out of the way. And do this. There we are. We'll get some sheet of paper here and we'll keep moving. Second thing, again, this whole idea about line weight, for example. Let's go back in and do the following here. Let's do this. Nice, simple, light sketch first. Now, power it up. Closest to me. A lot of weight. Lose it. A lot of weight. Let me turn this upside down here for a second. A lot of weight. Lose it. Same thing here. Lots of weight. Then to lose it. I'll come back up on top. Closest to me again. A lot of line weight. Thrust it in there. Fade it. And fade it. Nothing here. There's a little bit of surface up on top here. Let's kind of put a little bit of highlight back in that guy. Put a bit in there. Look at the difference in that sketch. That makes sense, gang? Good deal, making sense. I take the thick areas as well, or the brightest areas of the object. Yeah, they could be the brightest, yes. They could be, depending on where the light source is, Brad, that's excellent. I mean, it really begins to come together in terms of, look how powerful that sketch is. You're saying an awful lot by saying very little. Let me just go back to this for a second here, guys. Look at this. Look at the relationship we're making here. Look at the relationship. How one becomes extremely soft. Let's see if I can kind of tack those in there together. Just look at the difference between how form, for example, begins to really generate a softness. I mean, this is another way of saying this. I hope I can say this properly. Another way of saying the distinction between form and position is the following. Form is the genesis of the birth of an idea. It's the building process. It begins to build in terms of, well, let's see, is it this? Is it soft? Is it sharp in some areas? Is it darker or lighter? It's the genesis of getting an idea down. Now, when you move from that system to what we just talked about here, for example, in position, now the difference is this. Now you're looking at that shape in terms of what are its characteristics? What do you want to emphasize? What do you want the viewer to position itself on? That's why we call it position. Its function is to let the viewer position himself or herself to see what we're trying to tell the story over. And then when you put the two together, coming next Tuesday, hang on, gang. When you put form and position together, hold on to your seat. It's incredibly powerful, and it happens just like that. It's extremely quick. Let's move along here, and let me sharpen the stick here, and let's go back and do it again here. Let's go back and just generate some basic shapes here. Again, basic drawing. Just block it in, just like we do normally. Up on the point. Notice I'm being very delicate as well, just drawing through some things here. Now let's put some shape to it. Let's draw through it. Let's add to it. Notice how gestured that sketch is. That's just the basic shell. Now let's put power to it. Let's put power into it by using position to really pick up what we want the viewer to see. Another way of saying this is this. Pardon me for the reference here. Hope it makes sense. Position's purpose is to position the viewer's location or sight pattern to see what we want the viewer to see. So let's do this. Let's come back a lot of weight. Power up. Draw through it. Let me turn this upside down again to get that weight through. There it is there. Come back through here and get this edge to come into play. Let that fade just a little bit. Run that through. Bring this into play. Again, closest to me, weight up, losing it. Weight up, losing it. Underneath. Pardon me as I just turn this paper around a bit. Get the emphasis in. And line weight up, and then let it fade. Again, look at the power in that sketch. That makes sense, gang? So far, so good. Look at the variation you get in terms of line weight, where you go thick to thin, and then closest to me, power it up. As it moves, as it comes at me, hit it. As it moves away, fade it. As it comes to me, fade it. As it goes near it, fade it. And everything's moving in terms, the whole idea of getting these sketches down, for example, from the idea of just being really lucid is very simply this. A sketch should have a melody about it, should have a rhythm about it, should be a thick and thin, should have a concert change, a music change, for example. Notice the difference, an analogy we're going to make here is to music. The great thing about music is, and Nemo, you'd know this being a pianist, it's a tempo change. It's those pauses. It's the lights and darks. It's the heavies and so forth. The key changes. That's the same thing in terms of drawing. Drawing is an awful lot like a personality structure, for example. It has a light side, has a hard side, has a dark side. Everything moving into it is extremely dynamic. All these things become extremely paramount here in terms of putting together all the elements we're dealing with in terms of getting this position phenomenon to work down. And again, it's just a really neat process in terms of seeing how things begin to function. So let's go back and just do again, just a simple series of sketches here. No, it's just blocking it in. Now let's put a little bit of detail into this thing. Now let's hit it. There's the basic sketch. Hey, Shadow, how you doing? Good to have you on board there, Doctor. We're just going through some little processing work here on the idea of the first stream we did last Tuesday. It was all about how to form something, which is extremely soft and supple. That was the first estate, for example. We're going back and review here. That's the first estate, forming something, for example. Doing really well, thank you. It's very soft, and it's almost like the birth of an idea, where you're just being very cautious with, not cautious, that's a bad word, being very, very subjective with the fact you want to see the thing come out of the paper and just begin to develop the form. The first estate of creativity, as far as I'm concerned, is to form something, to build it very softly. Now, we come back here. Now, today's stream is all about the idea. The second estate is position. And position's function is to allow the viewer to sharpen in on what we want to see. In other words, position your viewer by using position as a line weight strength, thick and thin lines. Notice, again, the whole concept we've been dealing with here, Shadow, is this. Closest to me, thick to thin, thick to thin, thick to thin. Let it fade. Notice, thick to thin. Everything has a weight. Closest to me, build it up. As I go back and forth in space, now I can begin to change the tempo. Let's use this sketch right here. Let's get this weight to work. Thick, closest to me, a lot of weight. As I turn the corner, let it fade. Turn the corner, thick to thin, thick to thin, underneath. Same thing up in here. A lot of weight change. Closest to me, hit it. As I go back, fade it. A little bit of highlight here, no problem. Again, closest to me, it's still there. A lot of weight. As I come back again, bam, lose it. I mean, look at the tempo on these lines. As you come back again, down below, pardon me, that turns upside down. Let's go through this guy. Thick to thin. Look at the weight changes in that sketch. That gives it life or acceleration. You're really playing up the whole emphasis. Emphasis of how form works. I can go back and do a little more if you'd like to come back and do a little bit of weight change over here. But notice, I'm not even touching this far side at all. I'm putting all the emphasis right here. That's where I want to position my viewer. That's what I really want to see, for example. I want the viewer to know this is important. Everything else just kind of supports it. Nothing else happens. Notice, second thing for everybody's benefit too, Nemo, Brad, and Shadow, we're not toning things in. We're not putting any fill in here. We're going the exact opposite of form. Form is a lot of fullness, a lot of developing, a lot of soft shapes. Positions is hard-edged. It's extremely crisp. It's the voice of the form that changes the whole concept altogether. So there's another approach we're after here. Now let's go back. We're after something that's a little more difficult to deal with, and that's a round surface. If we go back into this guy, how do we do this? The trick here is to come back through the equator. Now, by changing the weight or the tempo of that shape, now you begin to develop. Now let's draw through it. Closest to me, fade. Closest to me, fade. Closest to me, fade. Again, look at the change of tempo here. A little bit of highlight to tell me where that edge is. Down through here, come underneath here. Let's add another little detail here to kind of give us some substance. Look what that does. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just developing form here, guys. Just, again, closest to me. A lot of weight change. Notice, again, even if I go inside or I build up on top again, notice, weight, lose it. Weight, lose it. Look how that shape reads as a result of using line weight to develop the whole idea. Jet powered bike helmet sitting. How you doing, Chip? Good to have you. Good to have you on board here. Again, that's how you develop a round surface. Now you can go back into this shape. Notice if I come back and add more detail. Let's say I add an element in here. The same thing. Closest to me. A lot of weight up, a lot of weight in. The whole idea. Look how that shape is defined by just simply adding line weight change or thrust to it. I mean, it's extremely delicate all the way through. Very unique in terms of how it's all done. Let's go back and do another set here. Okay, hope this is making sense for you. So far, so good. Get another fresh sheet of paper here. Let's go back and look at something else here very quickly here. Draw through it. Just build the shape. Now, there's a simple little thumbnail studs right there. Compared to this new chair. Yeah, the Emperor's new chair, yeah. So now let's go back to weight change here. Let's go back and pick this thing up from a weight point. Okay, let's get this guy to read here. There. Let's run that weight in place. Let's get that all set. Let's take it right up the body side of the seat, side panel. It's the bolster itself. Weight it up. Bring that back into play. Bring this in. Take it across. Again, weight to nothing. Bring that on through. Again. I mean, look at the personality you're creating in that concept sketch. Just really pulling it all together in terms of, Doc, how do you light your setup? What kind of lighting do you use? My hand bothers me most of the time because the light is too weak or my shadow keeps... I've got, Shadow was kind enough to give me a couple of soft halogen lighting here. I don't know if I've got the product name for it, but it's very soft lighting. There are two tower lights up here that kind of give me a nice little breakdown of light on the pad itself. Hi, Brad. I hope that helps. It's a very interesting set of circumstances I'm dealing with here. Overhead lighting is one thing, but the two soft halogens, really nice floodlighting in terms of flooding out the whole shape here, so the shadows don't get in the way. So I hope that helped. Making sense? So there's a good example again of how to work with this whole idea of line weight change. And again, notice a lot of weight up front here, just putting a lot of emphasis on the closest to me. Notice there's no tone going on in here. We're allowing our eyes to perceive, yay, perspective lights, they're soft and yeah, hey, great. Thanks, Shadow, appreciate that. I can send you some details in the Discord. Hey, great, thank you very much, Shadow. Cool stuff. Key is to get it slightly warm, but yeah, no problem. Hey, super, let's do this. I'm gonna go back in here. Let's come back in here just for a second. And just simple little series shapes here. Let's do this. Let's just generate some form. Again, notice, I'm using the point of the pencil, again, to develop the sketch. That's fine. But when I'm really going to make serious changes here, I'm going to switch gears and really get into an awful lot of weight changes here. Don't know what I'm drawing, just looks cool. That's it, I just wanted to draw. Again, right here, I can make a decision based on this and saying, you know what, here it is. I'm going to come in here, a lot of weight. Bring it up the corner, turn the corner, hit the radius, and then fade it. Up on top, backside line. Right away, you start to define that shape very quickly. Yeah. In here, a little bit of a return. Turn this upside down. Take me around the corner, thick to thin. Again, same thing here. If I had a detail in here, same process. All right, means I turn this upside down, thick to thin. There it is. Across the nose of this guy, notice what happens. As it moves away, a little more fade. And if there's a little bit of an embellished or a detailed piece across this element here, I can come back in and do the same thing. Pick it up, turn it around, and get the weight to work. Turn it a corner, thick and thin, run it right through the shape itself. If there's a little bit of a trench in there, that's fine. Just let the weight do it. Let the weight do the work. Look how that form is defined so quickly, because it's simply going into the idea of getting weights thickest to me. Closest to me, thick, thin. No need to highlight that backside line at all. I keep that real light. Why? Because it conveys a sense of depth of perspective. Does the weight get bolder the closer it is to the camera or the closer it is to the side of the object? The object itself, whatever the object is, for example, is what you're dealing with here, Brett. It's the object, for example, closest to me is this surface here. Closest to me is this surface here. Everything I'm drawing this far. Surfaces closest to me, really hit them and emphasize them. And then all of a sudden it changes the entire character of what you're working with here. Sometimes a little bit of change of pace will be nice to hit as well. You can get back underneath here, turn it upside down, and just emphasize where that break is. Bring it right back at you and rotate it out of there. You got it. So there it is. And just kind of add the section line where you are here. If you add a little bit of detail in this thing, let's add another sketch to it. And if I put that into play and put a drop in here, again, same thing, thick, back to thin. It just defined it. There it is. It's done. It's electrifying because you're not laboring with it at all. What you're doing with it is literally letting the forms work for themselves in terms of doing some really cool stuff with respect to the idea of putting together shape and form. This is another way of saying, for example, imagine, for example, that the form's already done. Now you're adding the accents, for example, that you want to add in terms of, we're going to do that. We're going to do that next Tuesday. We're going to put the two together, and it's going to be electrifying because I want to really focus in on, for example, what the distinctions are. Again, form, soft and gentle. Position, harsh, very definitive. It's more of an accentuating aspect of the drawing cycle than anything else is. So we come back in here and just do a little elevation study here for what it's worth. Just an elevation study. As simple as it might get. Again, closest to me, thick, fade, thick, let it fade. Highlight up on top, underneath, same thing. Let's turn this upside down for a bit here. Look how those line weights start to define that shape. I mean, it just has a lot of speed behind it and a lot of character. That's the cool thing about the whole idea here. Again, same thing again. Notice, there's a line drawing. There it is. Just a line drawing. Now, watch what happens when you start to put position into this thing. This is just an abstract form, like an aircraft of some sort. Advanced vehicle tactical fighter. Now again, notice, closest to me. Gonna hit it up, back. Take it back. Drive it in, thick to thin. Again, closest to me again. Turn this upside down just a little bit here. And there it is. Is that cool or what? Not the, not the actual idea, but just the idea of the principle of line weights and how they begin to really telegraph what the shapes are doing. I mean, look how powerful those line drawings are, because there's really not a lot there. It's just really interesting how, again, the distinction I want to make here today, folks, I'm sorry to be redundant, but I really want to stress, for example, what is taking place here. Not Brett. There's not even any need for shading. Yeah, it makes pretty clear. Yeah, that's great point, Brett. That's exactly what happens. You don't need to shade it because the eye kind of folds it all in. But wait, what happens? Let's see what happens next Tuesday when I start to add the two together, the third estate, when you start to put texture together. The third estate of line, which is now texture. When you bring the two together, it's absolutely drop dead awesome. Because you can't deny what you're seeing. These are just really rapid little sketches based on just potential thinking, for example, and how to begin to work with line to not force an issue, but understanding where the emphasis is. What do you want to sell? What do you want the viewer to see? How do you want to define that shape by using line weight? It's extremely powerful. I mean, there's no denying, for example, that these guys have got a sense about them. There's a speed about them. There's an emotion about them that tells your story. And I think that's what's great about the whole idea of getting it all put together here. Let's do that one. Let's put this aside here. Keep these guys separate. A whole bunch of sketches here. Notice again, variety of lines, for example, and how things will begin to work. You can use the same process, for example. Let's get another sheet of paper here. Go back and do this. Let me sharpen the stick for a second here. You can do the same thing when you move into certain things like this. Again, just a nice simple line drawing. There you go. Simple architectural study. A new stadium, or an evil liar needs more volcanoes. Hey, there it is. Anyway, that just again, same process, a little architectural study here. But look how the line weights begin to really embody the fact that the shape is really there, and we're just kind of highlighting what has to be taken care of in terms of putting a little bit of composition together here. So really interesting stuff here, guys. How it all begins to come together. Now let's go back here again. Turn this upside down here. Oops, I'm going to do that route for this route. I hope this is helpful. Pardon my silence here, guys. I'm just kind of concentrating on trying to get what we're dealing with here. Again, show a little bit of radius, double highlight right in there. And let it fade. Underneath. A little more weight. Take it around the corner here. I usually turn this upside down. A little bit of line thrust in this guy, and we'll be out of it. Just really spontaneous sketch. There it is. Look how that thing just begins to really crank at it here and hopefully jump off the page for us. Again, the purpose of position is to allow the viewer to see what you want them to see. It sharpens things up. It begins to focus in on things, whereas the other approach, whereas this whole concept of coming together now, for example, with form was to build an idea, just generating it. You're starting to see it, you're forming it. Whereas in the case of positioning it, now you've already got it, and you're just nailing it down in terms of really getting some really powerful sketches using line weight, or the second estate of line, which is power in the former position to really generate the shape. Notice, it doesn't take an awful lot. There's very little there, but you can read the surface, which allows the human mind and the eye to kind of fill in the blanks, which is really the beauty of drawing. It's not a matter, notice, let me show you something. What's more exciting? That, or let's do this. You tell me why power or position is so powerful. Let's look at that same thing and do this. See what I mean about making all those weights the same? Look at that. Yep, the mind does the rest. You got it. You just put emphasis on things, important things, Brett, the things that are really, really unique. Look at the difference. We have a habit of making sure we want our audience to see everything we're doing, outlining it. Notice every weight is the same. That is a destructive process. Now look at the difference between this sketch. Let me just kind of organize these guys for a minute here. Nope, I guess not. Wrong, maybe about right there. Does that work? Yeah, let's look at the difference from that to that. My question is, yeah, that really shows the difference. What happens when you go from this level to that level? Which is more exciting? Which tells your audience, which sketch will tell your client, you really know your craft? This to me is hope it works. This is look out, get out of my way. I can't say any more convincingly than that. That's how I feel about when I draw. My whole conviction is to put it down on paper, that it becomes alive. It lives. It has a spirit about it, and it has a real challenging approach to, okay, challenge me if you can. I dare you. Bottom one looks like a kid's drawing. Yeah, that's it. Chip 7. Yeah, definitely the one with the line weight variations tells more of a story. Yeah, no question about it, gentlemen and gang. That's so true. And I'm not making fun of this approach at all. I'm just trying to compare. Do not get in the habit of outlining. Every weight becomes the same. There's no sense of depth. There's no sense of spirit. There's no sense of conviction. You're just putting down an idea and hoping that it works. Whereas in this case, let's put it this way, gang, you know it works. That definitely has a function about it that cannot be denied nor ignored. It just really tells a story. And I think that's the process today that we'll end with here. I don't want to get too confusing here. Let's go back and review just for a second as to where we were. Get these sketches back in place here. Let's take a look at what we had. We started with this family. There it is. Let's do this, this, and this. We started with this family of forms. Again, in review, the difference between this approach, form, which is that approach right there. Notice, look at the difference in character. Let's put them side by side if we can. Look at the difference in personality. Oops, let's drop this just a bit more. Get this back on the screen. Move this up a little bit. No, I'm going to get some of it. Look at the difference between what's happening here and what's happening here. Now imagine, for example, coming in next Tuesday, the lesson plan is going to be combining the two to create an inseparable force, a power in your drawings that will not be denied. And you'll be distinctive because you'll have a semblance about yourself and a personality about your work that is undeniable. And furthermore, one of the great variations about the two process, form, position, and then into texture next week, is this. You will be marketable beyond belief because they can't label you as being one or the other. You will not have a label in the marketplace. You'll be known well before you get there. Your reputation will precede you because you'll have a presence in the marketplace. Hey, have you seen this guy's sketches? You see like sketches. What do you see his final work? It's absolutely amazing. If you see the lower first, it's like, wait, where are my glasses? And then you see the upper. Ah, there. Yeah, good point. Excellent point, Nemo. Yeah, this is again good analogy here. Thank you very much. Does look out of focus. Looks out of focus here, Chip, because you're actually building a sketch. You're not committed to it yet. You're building a drawing. You're starting to see it work. You're creating an image out of a vapor. This one, now you've got the image. You're going to start nailing it down. And we're going to start putting these two together, and it's going to be absolutely drop dead awesome. So there we are. And now we moved into position. The whole idea, let me go back to this first sketch. I'm sorry. The first page we did was this. This is what the personality of position is. Its personality is unlike this, which is form. Notice the softness. And then no weight change. Then no weight change again. Look at the difference in thrust. That's form. Now position comes into play. Weight, lighter. More weight, lighter, weight change, thick, the thin, back to variation in speed and tempo, turning it upside down. Notice weight change, thick, gives it an energy, a strike pattern. It's just undeniable. So there we are. We started there, form, position, did a little series of things like how to do it, round circle. Closest to me, hit it. As it moves away, fade it, and then hit where the highlight is. Same thing down here. Same process, a little bit of a shape here, closest to me, hit it, let the rest of it fade away, hit it, closest to me, really power it up. Same concept here, a little rounder surface, but notice how I use an element in the design itself and in the elements of these facets and knurls to kind of define the shape for me. That's where the drawing power comes in. Now that was the first page. Second page we did, let's move to this. We're right into this situation. Again, same variation in theme. Again, line weight change. Look at the difference in how the whole thing begins to read. Thick and thin, thick to thin, Why thick to thin? Because again, closest to me, hit it. As it moves away, power, let it lose itself. That gives you a sense of depth. Don't fill it all in. Give it some power. Same thing here, thick to thin, thick to thin. Same process here, different shape variations. Let's go back to this next sketch, the third one we did. Open up a little bit more, a little softer seating system. Same principle works. I'm gonna move this down just a little bit. And there it is there. Come back in again with a little bit of that shape change, a little typical form study here. A little elevation of maybe a jet aircraft or a copter of some sort. This is a little bit of an overhead shot of a nice little form shape that's maybe an abstract little aircraft vehicle of some sort out of Star Citizen or something of that nature. Just a little bit of a change of pace. But again, using the same weight, so thick to thin. And again, the whole thing begins to sing and it just reads. And you can't wait to look at it because it's got a sense about it or an energy that's just undeniable. And last but not least, the last one we did was taking it into architectures because it's a universal language. It's not just for product. You can use it for figure work, etc. Again, an architectural statement, a little bit of an elevation study of what might be coming in terms of a terminal of some sort. And then the last but not least, again, back to simple product design here. You have been extremely patient here, gang, and I hope this has been helpful to you as it was much fun for me to put together. Just kind of put these all back in place, and we'll kind of field any questions. Any last minute questions or concerns before we wrap it up here today? Any commentary? Hopefully it's been some assistance to you. If not, please let me know and we'll come review it here as best we can before we head out and call it a day. Anybody? Feel free. Yep, Chip said, this is good. Well, thanks, Chip. I'm hoping it helped you. It helped me, for example, to get that down and out of the way. Nemo already helped me with this, but I thought I'll take your opinion. And that opinion is what, Brad? I'm sorry. None already helped me with this, but I thought I'll take your opinion. Okay. So are we good there, Brad, as far as process goes? You'll see this to be extremely helpful. How do I draw part of a drawing that I can't see? I got that yesterday, for example, your question, Brad, and I wasn't quite sure about what you were referring to. The lesson was good, but I'm drawing that I can't see. I think a lot of that, maybe I'm going to take a wild guess here. I'm still a little bit clarification might be needed, but I think what you're saying is if you can't see something, how do you generate it? Well, I think you build through it, you draw through it and construct it as you go through the process. So construct the whole thing that you see and you can't see, then emphasize what you are able to see by just putting some thrust into it or some power behind it. Does that help at all or not? I'm not sure. How do I draw part of a drawing that I can't see? I think the best way to describe that, I go through that when I do a lot of transportation design work, in fact, in product design work. You can't see the far side of an object, but I draw through it to begin to see it and understand it. Then I begin to emphasize that what I can see, I begin to really emphasize. Hopefully that makes sense for you. No, not at all. Just ask the questions. That's great. I have 2 other questions. And I'm not pushing you at all. No, please, fire away. Let's see. Like if I want to draw the head of a character, but the shoulder of the character is blocking half of the ears. All right, that's exactly what's happening. That question you've got right there. I have 2 other questions. Let's see. I want to draw the head of a character, but the shoulder of the character is blocking half the ears. The point there, Brad, is to draw through it. Don't ignore the fact that maybe the shoulder is blocking out part of the ears. Lightly draw through and put the ears in, then begin to really develop the shoulder that's obstructing the ear, the site itself. Simply, how you don't deconstruct a drawing. You draw through it. You construct it again very lightly. Then you come back in and really power in what you can see over the top of that, what you want to hide. Does that make sense? So if the shoulder's obliterating the ear a little bit, draw the whole product as if you're seeing it. Then separate it out by getting really strong by putting the shoulder in place that it's going to block out. It's going to block out what you can't see. That's, I think, the answer to your question. And I go through the same process when I draw. For example, I can't see the backside of some of these shapes, but I'm seeing through it so that I begin to perceive what I'm after, and I go back and really power in what I can see. So that's the right way to do that, no question at all. Super. Hopefully that helps. I think he was referring to the propagating the visible parts beyond an object to draw. Yep. Okay, that's it. You got it. Just draw through it. See the whole thing as you would develop it, see it in sight. Then, if you block something out, use that, the element that's blocking the view, for example, in this case, a shoulder. Now you emphasize that, and then all of a sudden it takes care of itself. Super. How do I deconstruct other people's drawings? That's a good question. I don't think I can answer that one. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where you're actually deconstructing something or another drawing. Maybe analyzing it is one thing, but to deconstruct it, I think, is another process altogether. So maybe your question is more like, how do you analyze other people's work? I don't know if that's the question at all, Brad. But hopefully this session here will help you kind of clarify some of the things we're dealing with in terms of line weight and the language of line, how functional, how powerful it really is. Especially powerful when you begin to understand their function. What form does and what position does, and when you combine them, it's going to be drop dead awesome. So, very good, gang. Great session today. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your attentiveness. Great questions. Good session here today. Hopefully we got some things out of it that some help to you. And stay tuned, for example, if you're like, I understand it, in 30 minutes of the stream. Super. Excellent stuff, gang. We're actually into it here in terms of getting into next. I'll be live tomorrow at. I'll be live tomorrow at let's see, 4 to 5 on Wednesday, doing a little bit of stream work, and then again on Thursday from 1:30 to 2:30 again, or thereabouts, 3 o'clock. So thank you so much for joining in today, gang. And please take a moment to visit my website at drcontrast.com if you have any questions or concerns. Really begin to look at that, and feel free to drop me a note on my email at drcontrast.com as well. I can get to you and answer as best I can as we go through the day and through the messages that are sent. And above all else, really thank you. The publication's getting ready to be on the board here. We should have that pretty soon. I'm very sorry for the delay here, but we're trying to put together a byline on it and getting it loaded into the system, so we're all set to go there. And last but not least, I will sign off with this because I think it's really critical. I can't thank you enough for being part of the process here. I've read an awful lot to me. And thank you so much for taking the time to join in here today. And above all else, gang, never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. All the very best. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye now.